Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Executive Committee. I'm going to start, before we start, the usual reminder, a little housekeeping for the evening. Please can I remind everybody of the following. Please can all mobile phones be kept on silent or turn them off during the meeting where possible. There are no fire alarms planned, so in the event of a fire, please make your way out of the room and following a member of the staff to the evacuation point on Southern A Green at the Blitz Tree. A reminder now of how I intend to proceed. We will hear from the officers to introduce the report, and then I will invite questions and comments from executive members. After executive members have spoken, I will then invite group leaders who have indicated that they wish to speak, and I will call them forward to the table in order that those who have indicated can speak. I also wish to remind group leaders that questions may be asked, but also that their contributions are clear as to whether their group support or not support a recommendation to assist the executive in our decision process. Questions should not be, may not be answered on the evening, in which case a written answer will be given. Should the question be relevant to the decision about to be made, then I may ask the portfolio holder to either respond or I may refer it to an officer for their response. We will then confirm the recommendations from the report and move to the vote. Please also note that any items which have already been considered and debated by other committees, I ask that members not to repeat the same questions which have already been answered at those committees, or if they are waiting for an answer outside of that committee. Thank you. So I'll start with apologies, and I think we've got an apology from Councillor Matt Vizard and also from one of the opposition leaders, Michael Mitchell. Okay, good. So I now move on to the minutes of the previous executives, and the first set of minutes for me to sign is the minutes of the 19th of June. So I'll sign those, I'll move those. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, all those agreed. Minutes of the 24th of June, I'll move them. A seconder, please. All those agreed. And then the minutes of the 8th of July of this year, I need to put forward an amendment. Councillor Vizard not here, as wants us to amend minute 54, which currently states carbon neutral city should be replaced with net neutral city. And so I'm going to move that. Oh yeah, sorry, net zero city. So replace, that's it. And so I'm going to move that amendment to the minutes, and in moving that amendment, I'm going to treat it as a substantive to agree those minutes with that as amended. All those want to propose it, seconder? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. If anybody has any declarations in accordance with the Code of Conduct, please declare them at the appropriate time. There are no Part 2 items of this agenda. We have no, item 5, public questions. There are none. Item 6, matters referred by scrutiny to us. There has been none. And so we gallop straight on to page 23 and the review of the corporate risk register. And this is where we are noting the report. Over to you, Dave Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. This is the quarterly report of the corporate risk register. Two things to note this time. Firstly, as the new corporate plan has been approved at the last council meeting, there will be a thorough review of the corporate risk register in time for the next time it comes before you, which will be in December of this year. And secondly, just to highlight that one of the risks, risk 4, relating to financial sustainability, has increased this time. This reflects the fact that we're into a new financial year. We're really early in the process, and as members are all aware, there is considerable work to do to ensure a balanced budget next year. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Dave. I'm going to open it up to the floor. Executive members, any questions or contributions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just a contribution really to make it clear to all the people that aren't on executive that everything that's on this risk register is brought to us as lead councillor members with our meetings with directors on a regular basis. So sometimes it seems the risk register comes to us and we just vote it in. That's because we've already been doing all the background work on it in our own individual portfolios. So that was just my contribution, Chair.
Thank you very much. If there's nobody else, I'll invite any of the group leaders. Councillor Moore, and while you're walking forward, Councillor Moore, I have been given a brief as to some of the issues and questions that were raised at the Audit and Governance Committee recently relating to this. So we take that as read, and so if I cannot have, as I said in my opening address, if we cannot repeat those things, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Bionic. I'd just like to highlight to the committee that I think there's perhaps a drafting error between the report and the heat map, which is all very helpful, and the set appendix 2, because the scores and the ratings are different between the documents, so maybe that might be corrected before it comes to council. And I must say, I am going to comment on the net zero risk, because that seems to be disproportionately in a downward trend, which is surprising given that I wouldn't expect the projects that are being proposed to reduce carbon emissions by 2030, i.e. a car park in particular, are actually going to have such a mitigating effect to decrease it to such an extent. So I must say I'm rather surprised, and I can't remember if I raised it at the Audit and Governance Committee. You are going to have to forgive me, please, but I really am concerned about the one about the culture and heritage in terms of the state of the city wall, and considering that the mitigation now says the score is really low, and actually the city wall has vulnerabilities at least 16 sites around the wall, and so I remain to be convinced that actually that's been sufficiently looked into, and I would be grateful for a written response in relation to that one. Thank you.
Okay, any other council leader wish to speak? No, okay, thank you. Well, some of those issues were raised, and I indulged you a bit there because you've got a very short agenda. If we had 20 or 30 items on the agenda, I might have intervened a little bit. Some of those issues are being dealt with, and so I note that you need to be convinced, and that's a matter for you. I fully get it. So thank you very much. Dave, can you talk about the highlighting in the scores that were raised, if that is possible?
Yeah, that's correct. We'll take that away, and I'll work with the team that produced the report to make sure that when a risk is amended, it's reflected in all the appendices.
Thank you, David. So the recommendation is to note the report. I'm going to move it from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Not Councillor Wright. All those in favour of noting the report, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair, so that has been carried.
Thank you very much, Mark. We now move on to item 8, pages 43 to 48, and members' allowances and expenses paid. And here we are to note the report of what allowances paid and expenses claimed by members for 24-25. And this is over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual report into members' allowances and expenses paid. This is a statutory obligation on the council to set this out. And the only thing to note is that the expenses came in under budget for 2024-25. Happy to take any questions.
Well, that wasn't the headline we read. Is there Is there any questions from the executive or comments, please? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. Just a quick clarification, I think, for some that may read other than the actual source documents. This is all the money that the councillors receive. We don't have a salary. We don't have allowances. The allowances and the expenses are all that we receive. When you read some of the headlines that are out there, it sounds like we might have a salary plus this. This is all we receive.
Thank you, Councillor Wood, for clarifying that. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, and thank you for flagging up the fact that the expenses have come in quite way under budget. Just to point out, before COVID and before we started doing things online, it was the responsibility of councillors to keep themselves trained and have CPD, ongoing continuous professional development, and very often we would be expected to attend events in Westminster and different events for councillors across the country. So obviously the expenses for that, for travel and accommodation, were quite high. Since now we are able to access a lot of that in our own homes by taking training online, that has brought that cost down. So just to flag up, it doesn't mean that we're any less trained up than we used to be or any less engaged. It's just managed to save some money on the expenses. There are, however, some conferences that are face-to-face, and there's an expectation to attend those. So in those columns, that's what those conferences are about, the Local Government Association, Annual Conference, etc., that some of us are able to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nobody else, Dave, can I ask, it's a legal requirement, totally get all that, and quite rightly so. The table, is that a statutory table? Because what I generally believe what should happen, there should be another column. So where we've got the basic allowances, special allowances, comments, of course, I really think that should be totalised as to that is the physical allowances that the members are receiving. The subtotal, which is a bit talks to what Councillor Wood was saying, because it's got a total over there. The subtotal over there is a total, which is the total amount received with allowances. But of course, for those people who, for instance, there's a councillor here who's received 179, well, that might have been a rail fare. They haven't physically been given that money, if you understand what I mean. So there should be, this is the allowance and this is the expenses in carrying out their duties. I just need to, rather than wrapping it all up at the end there, which leads to the conclusion that that particular councillor is receiving that in total. Well, they're not. They're not. I mean, that may not stop the busyness online, by the way, but at least you can point to it to make it justifiable. So if that could be done for the future, Dave, the total of the allowances paid, which is received by the member, and then the expenses in carrying out their role as a councillor in whatever capacities in addition to. Dave.
I'll absolutely take that away. What I would say is this conforms with exactly the same way as it's presented for officers in the statement of accounts, in terms of how it's presented, and all officers' expenses are included in the subtotal. The one thing that's at the end is pension contributions from the council. So it does conform, but I'll check the legal basis and see if we can.
It's only put in another column to identify it, because if it's the same for the officers, see, I'm not sad I don't go looking at all of that, you know what I mean? Two, so the officers are expected to go away onto courses and to go to events and meetings, and if that totals up an amount, we know full well they aren't personally getting that as well as their allowance. That's been paid on their behalf for those expenditures, and I think that just needs to be clear. That's all I would like to say. So On that point, is there any member of the opposition leaders wish to speak on this one? Yep, come forward, councillor. We know who you are.
Thank you, Leader. It might seem unimportant, but I want to raise it anyway, because it's in line with what you've just been saying, Leader, in terms of the public perception of what we receive and the reality of what we receive. And I just wanted to say for the record that some councillors are on committees like planning, for example, that start immediately after work at 5:30. We're rushing over here. Sometimes those meetings don't finish till 9:30, understandably so, because they're legally very important committees to sit on. But actually, before COVID, councillors received a sandwich and a drink during that time, and we don't do that anymore. And I feel that it's worth saying out loud that if you've done a 9 to 5 in an average office job, to then rush to a committee like planning and then not be able to leave the room until 9:30. This also happens in the Guildhall, where we're not able to just pop off to the loo or whatever, or grab a drink or a cup of tea or whatever. So then there's the additional expense of grabbing a bag of chips on the way home type thing. So I just wanted to raise that as being like, if we are under budget, can we consider tea, for example? And I just want to say that for the public perception also.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. We have been looking at that. I'll be talking to the portfolio and the chief executive about that. You're quite right, because there's other people with medical conditions as well through the prolonged needs things from time to time. We need to look at it. We've done it for a very good reason, because we had to demonstrate to the public that we too were sort of making changes and everything else. But there is a reality. We need to do the job properly, and or do a different way of doing it. So thank you. We'll take that on board. Thank you very much for that contribution. So there is the recommendation for us that we note it. So I'm going to ask for a seconder now. I've got one, Councillor Ryan. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That's been carried.
Thank you very much. You can tell it's a nice evening. The meeting's over and we're back on Tuesday, the 23rd. But just remind you, we're all together 3 nights' time at the Guildhall at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much. 2 nights' time, yes. Well, you